And welcome back to the last Who Would Win of the week of Who Would Wins. Although Monday I always do Who Would Win, so I guess technically tomorrow is. But anyway, and this one comes to us from Ghost Reaper DH47. You asked the question, who would win the fight? King Ghidorah or Saitama from One Punch Man? Now, I feel like it's an obvious answer with the exception of one version of Ghidorah, in which case then we can actually have a debate. But let's be really upfront here. Most versions of Ghidorah are probably going to get one-shotted by Saitama. Now, to be fair, right off the bat, we first I don't know what the full potential of Saitama is. I stand by the idea that he does have, even though he broke his limiter, there is some sort of limitation to his power. We've just never seen it. Because we've never seen him go truly all out before. We've never seen that happen. But if he truly had, like, the limitless strength that... there's different types of limitless, obviously. There is limitless in terms of how we can perceive strength. Like, we can't comprehend how much strength someone has, and then, i.e., it could be limitless to our perspective, our standards. And then there's limitless, like, literally, like, there is no infinite power. Saitama can't have infinite power because just by moving around, he'd literally shake mountains. And Worldbreaker Hulk is actually a perfect example of that. If you were to argue that Saitama is stronger than Worldbreaker Hulk, that would make no sense, at least initially, because Saitama, just by walking then, just like all Worldbreaker Hulk did, would be destroying the planet just by moving. That's not to say Saitama's not capable of doing that. It's just he probably has to hold back a lot of his power. But the problem also is he has trouble holding back. He had to learn to hold back. That's why he did normal consecutive punches. Learn to punch normal consecutive punches, and then, unleash a lot more of his power. So, I mean, what do we know from a cap-off perspective? From the most amount of power we've seen him use, what is the strongest strength he overall has? There was that giant monster centipede. I don't know if it was actually called monster centipede. I don't think so. That was frankly bigger than a lot of Godzilla kaiju, and Saitama was able to blow that thing back. But obviously, the two biggest strength feats we should really go off of when it comes to Saitama at the moment is destroying King Boros's, Thunder Crash Cannon? Was that what it was called? King Boros. No, it was Lord Boros. That's what his name is. Lord Boros. What was the name of that attack? I always forget the name. I like Lord Boros was a cool villain. Like, great design, all that. It's a shame that he had to, be another fodder for Saitama. But still, I liked King Boros. He was pretty awesome. Let's see here. Abilities. Okay. Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon. That's what it was called. Cool name, too. Now, how strong that attack actually is up for debate, because you get some people who say it could raise a planet, and some people, or some translations that say it could raise the planet. Hold on. This is Boros' final most powerful move. This power is said to use all his power up and is capable of wiping out the entire planet, although in the manga it is stated it can only wipe out the planet's surface. So, yeah, it all depends on which interpretation you're looking at. Wiping out the surface of a planet is not planet busting. That's extinction level, but here's the thing. The meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs is extinction level, and that meteor wasn't planet busting. So, if we highball it to planet busting, that means that Saitama, who literally punched the cannon in half and then threw all that energy back at Boros, basically, wiping him out, was able to not only save the planet, but match a planet-busting feat. So at minimum, Saitama's planet-busting. The other attack, obviously, we can look at for his strength is the meteor feat, where he blew up a meteor. But that meteor probably wasn't extinction level. That probably wasn't a planet-busting meteor. So the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon was probably the best strength feat at the moment we can go off of for Saitama. So we assume that he is at minimum, and even Boros says that he wasn't going flat. So Saitama is probably above planetary in terms of his physical strength. It's just a matter of where's the cap. It's clear Saitama is not a universal being. At least we haven't seen anything that illustrates he is. We haven't met a being who surpasses Lord Boros yet. Like, I don't want anyone saying he fought God, because he didn't fight God. That's a fan-made manga. But it's implied there is like a deity level figure that may show up at some point. So whatever that may be, Saitama just hasn't had a real challenge yet. But if we're to assume he's at least multi-planetary, maybe solar system, if he were to somehow deliver a punch that would, mess up the solar system. We know he's immune to most forms of attack, though I don't think it's impossible for him to feel pain. There just hasn't been an opponent who could actually dish out enough damage to hurt him. But we know he can withstand a lot of damage, even though survive in the vacuum of space. Even though he still needs to breathe, because he got blasted to the moon and cratered the moon, and then flung himself back to the Earth's surface. We know that he can survive massive amounts of gravity and not even feel it. So the question is there any version of Ghidorah that can really match that? So Showa era and Heisei era Ghidorah, and that does not include Mecha King Ghidorah, because that is technically a different creation, a different creature. Neither of those, they're capable of flight. Their gravity beams are just electric blasts, really. They're electricity. He's pretty durable, can go toe-to-toe with Godzilla, but size-wise, he's not much bigger than some of the biggest things, some of the biggest creatures that Saitama has fought. So, and Godzilla has ultimately beaten him one-on-one. Which is weird. Godzilla and Heisei is much stronger than Showa era Godzilla. That's why he's probably able to beat Ghidorah one-on-one, whereas Showa era Godzilla needed help from others to beat him. Either way, probably Saitama could just one-punch the Showa era and Heisei era Ghidorah. Honestly, he probably could. Then you get into, now there is the Ghidorah that shows up in Mothra movies that I often forget. Not Kaiser Ghidorah, because that's in Destroy All Monsters. No, Final Wars. Sorry, that's Final Wars. But again, I'll be honest. Against Heisei, Kaiser Ghidorah as well. Saitama that one's one of the strongest versions of Ghidorah, sure, but it still probably doesn't put up a fight. I'm trying to remember the name. Des Ghidorah. Des Ghidorah does show up in the Mothra movies, and then transforms into one of the stronger, a much stronger, and honestly, one of the more badass looking versions of Ghidorah. Very sharp, angular, very cool looking, and he did have a much more wide variety of powers. That Ghidorah, he was able to create force fields. He was able to do mind control. He was a much more dangerous Ghidorah. And Mothra was still able to beat him one-on-one. So good for him. Granted, Mothra needed a power-up, but he's still able to do that. Still, I don't think that's enough for him to take on Saitama. So if those two meet, maybe he's able to take a hit from Saitama. But Saitama still would ultimately end up beating that Ghidorah. And then obviously Final Wars Ghidorah, I still think Saitama wins that fight. So we only got two versions of Ghidorah left to talk about. We have the Legendary Ghidorah. Now, Legendary Ghidorah is actually one of the largest versions of Ghidorah. He stands well over 500 feet tall, making him very, very large, much larger than most other interpretations. In fact, it should be noted that the Legendary series Godzilla is one of series Godzilla and its monsters are among the largest of the interpretations, and Ghidorah is no exception of that. You should also know that Ghidorah, just by existing, was affecting the weather, and just by flying, he literally summons a Category F hurricane, just by flying and more or less existing. So that something. Now he's fought the Sea King, I think it was I can't remember, the Deep Sea King, I think it was called, who was also affecting weather, but not on that scale. Now he was just bringing rain, whereas Ghidorah is literally lightning, thunder, massive winds, hurricane. Ghidorah is literally altering the planet. So that is a level of threat that Saitama, I think, is not normally accustomed to. And it should be noted that this Ghidorah could survive the Oxygen Destroyer. had massive regeneration capabilities, could tank Godzilla's atomic breath, could siphon off energy and make itself stronger. It took Godzilla going nuclear, basically burning Godzilla, to basically take Ghidorah down. Although I will say this, had Ghidorah not actually absorbed that energy, I think Godzilla might have won that fight. Because they say Ghidorah won that fight when their first go-around, which was like years after they had fought the last time. The directors even said, had the army not disrupted them with the oxygen destroyer, Godzilla would have won that fight underwater, because it was on his turf and Ghidorah wasn't prepared for that fight. And I honestly think if Ghidorah hadn't gotten that energy boost, Godzilla might have won. But Ghidorah got the energy boost, so then he was able to overwhelm Godzilla. This fight, I think, might go a little... I mean, I think Saitama still pulls it off, but I think this Ghidorah actually puts up a solid fight. Let's actually say that Saitama punches off one of this Ghidorah's heads, which is very likely. Even though, like, the body of Ghidorah could probably take a hit, like, the heads are still more vulnerable because it's just smaller area of force, so not as more force on the area is just going to cause more damage. So one of the heads gets blown off, but Ghidorah blows him back when he blasts him with the gravity beams. Saitama's clothes are like burnt and singed, but he's still overall fine. Maybe he's got some scuff marks. That's a pretty impressive loss. Then Ghidorah actually regenerates, says like, "Oh, he can grow. Oh, oh, he can grow stuff back, huh? Neat." So they keep going again, but again, Ghidorah is able to blow him back, and then you'll blast him point blank with 3 simultaneous gravity beams. That maybe does cause him to be like tingly, but ultimately, he just muscles through it, decides to take it a little bit more seriously, and it takes maybe a couple punches to put this Ghidorah to get down, because it's clear this Ghidorah is a lot more durable than the previous generations. But ultimately, he does. So I do think, ultimately, first off, Saitama is going to win the overall stretch of versions of Ghidorah. But there is one Ghidorah that we really need to address. That is the anime Ghidorah from the Netflix series, which I've never actually watched. I do have access to Netflix now, so maybe I should give it a watch at some point. Now, this Ghidorah's size kind of is incalculable. But he is well and truly the largest version of Ghidorah there is. He is literally he's an interdimensional being that just by existing in our world is bending space and time. So it's bending gravity as it is. So that being said, the gravity bending actually wouldn't do anything to Saitama, because we know Saitama can survive massive amounts of gravity. The time and space thing, though, that might be a problem, because we've never seen Saitama fight someone like that. And then there's the whole siphoning off energy, literally just devouring planets, and the fact that Ghidorah is intangible. Ghidorah, when he enters our world, due to the fact that he's anchored to a host to some degree, he is intangible in our world. Basically, you have to make him tangible in our world in order to hurt him. And therein lies the ultimate problem in this fight, is that if you can figure out how to do that, great. But the problem is, can you? And Saitama's not dumb, but he's not a thinker. He's not a very bright... He's not dumb. He's just not he's not an overly intelligent guy. I don't think he'd be able to figure that out. Someone else would have to do that for him. So, 2 versions of this fight. No one's able to figure that out, that there's someone anchoring Ghidorah to this world. Or B, there is someone who is able to. If there is someone who is able to figure out that Ghidorah is anchored to this world by someone, then yes, I still think Saitama would beat him. But to be fair, that's a lot. That's a lot of Ghidorah there. Ghidorah is huge. Like, he easily surpasses anything that Saitama's ever had to fight in terms of sheer size. And the ability, he just destroys and eats planets. That's his deal. So... I think it would be actually a legitimate tough fight for Saitama, but I think he'd do it. Then there's the other scenario where no one's able to figure out that he's anchored to someone, so he remains intangible. There is nothing Saitama can do against something he can't hit. Like that mosquito, for example. He couldn't hit that mosquito, so yeah. So ultimately, I think what's going to happen is Ghidorah's pretty much got nigh infinite energy in that form. When he becomes intangible, he's subjugated to the limitations of the plane he's on. But if he's not, then he's intangible, or when he becomes tangible, I should say, subjugated to the laws of the world he's in. But if he's still intangible, he's not. He's pretty much got as much energy as he wants. Eventually, Saitama's got to have a limit to how much damage he can take. He may have broken his limiter. I get the concept of the phrase, but everyone has a limit to how much damage they can take. Unless you're someone like the Juggernaut, who is, by all accounts, invulnerable, and even then, he's not truly invulnerable. He can be, magic can get to him and all that, reality warping, all that goodness. Unless you're like literally the god of whatever universe you are in, there has got to be a limit to what you can take, and there has got to be a limit to what Saitama can take. Until they actually say that just because he's broke his limit doesn't actually mean he's limitless. Until they actually say that he could literally take all the energy in the universe and keep going. Until they say that, he's got to have a limit. And if Ghidorah technically has no limit on the energy he can use while he's intangible, then I have to go with Ghidorah for the win, because eventually he will. Also, let's not forget, he siphons energy off. He could theoretically chomp onto Saitama. It wouldn't actually grab him, but, grab onto Saitama, just tries to fight. Really can't do anything. And starts to drain whatever amount of energy Saitama has, which probably is a lot, given the amount of strength he has. And Saitama just goes blap. Maybe it doesn't kill him, but it just goes blap. I'm sleepy. So, yeah, I do think Anime Ghidorah is the only version of Ghidorah that could win, but only if he remains intangible. If he does not remain intangible, then I think Saitama, with actually some effort on his part, would beat him. Now, ultimately, Saitama does win against Ghidorah outright when we're looking at all the versions of Ghidorah. But there is one version of Ghidorah that I think wins, and it is the intangible version of the Anime Ghidorah. Ultimately, though, what are your thoughts? I know there's a lot of people who argue the whole Saitama thing about he's limitless. That's the point. He's a spoof character. He's a parody guy. I get it. We have to look at it in the context of what's shown in the series and then kind of extrapolate from there. So I'm sure I'm going to get people who get on my case for that. It's fine. It's part of YouTube. What are you going to do? Trust me. Now, I will fully admit, like when I did the Splash versus the Archie death battle prediction, I'll fully admit I messed that one up. I fully admit it. I take the brunt of that. I was not aware of what Archie Sonic was really capable of. With that said, though, even now knowing what Archie Sonic is still capable of, I'm still going with the Flash. But I won't be shocked to see Archie Sonic win. So that being said, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. And ideas for who would win, Star Wars, superhero, magic, what if anything within the channel. Put that in the comments below as well. I'll get that at some point. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Still got 2 other videos to do.